When I look back at my early 20s, I think there's one thing that held me back more than anything else, and that was self-doubt. But seeing that hindsight is 2020, I now realise that there were a few things that I could have probably done earlier to avoid this. So in this video, I want to go over 4 surprisingly simple habits that I've picked up over the last several years that have helped to destroy self-doubt and build my self-confidence. A lack of self-confidence can usually be summed up by the state of not being happy with who it is that you really are. And for many, like myself, being confident isn't something that comes naturally. I was actually a fatherless kid growing up when I lost my dad at the age of 6, so as you can imagine, having only my immigrant mum and English grandparents for guidance left me pretty confused, which definitely caused some blows to my self-confidence. This meant that I never really felt like I fit in, as I was one of a handful of minority students in an incredibly white high school. So like a lot of confused and angry teenagers, I looked for role models in completely the wrong places, and I ended up overcompensating for my insecurities pretty badly. But somehow I managed to escape a pretty miserable and self-defeating existence when I escaped to university in London, and I now realise that the new habits that I developed played a huge role in gaining confidence and turning my life around. Despite now being a YouTuber, I wouldn't actually say that I'm naturally confident, as I'm actually quite shy and introverted in real life, and I've always cared way too much about what other people think. But now I've realised that actually 4 habits play a big role in saving me from spiralling back into a state of low self-esteem, and the first of these habits is exercise. It's really an uncomfortable biological truth that physical attractiveness has huge implications on the way that we're treated. So there's no doubt that how I perceive my appearance in the mirror will have enormous implications on how I feel about myself. But what's interesting is that I don't think that taking care of my appearance is actually what helped me become more confident. And when I started working on my scrawny frame during my 20s, what really helped me was something that was happening on the psychological level. In hindsight, when I had low self-confidence and I was filled by self-doubt or self-loathing, I was in a state where my own inadequacies were becoming very apparent. When any of us are in this state, it gives us one of 2 choices. We can either ignore or wallow in our own insecurities and blame the rest of the world for the way that things are, or we can recognize that we have a shortcoming and pluck up the courage to attempt to try and fix it. This is actually an amazing thing, as recognizing our inadequacies gives us a goal to work towards. So instead of dwelling in a place of fear or shame, we may ask ourselves, what if I was less ashamed just a week from now? Or what would happen if I just work on these things a little bit and see if my life improves to the point where I'm not quite so ashamed and bitter about it? Making small incremental changes like these can get you a long way and work wonders for your self-confidence by choosing to overcome small but achievable goals each day that are both challenging enough to test you, but not so challenging that they paralyze you. And as you can imagine, exercise turns out to be the perfect fit for fostering this kind of mentality, as it builds your confidence with small wins whilst fighting the side of you that always wants to give up and just overcompensate instead. This doesn't stop there though. The incredible power in building a habit like this is that this mindset can subconsciously carry over into other areas of your life, sending ripples of change to places that are completely uncorrelated, which is why it isn't really uncommon to see people completely turn their lives around after changing just one habit. Charles Duhigg calls this a keystone habit in his book The Power of Habit, and in my experience, exercise has been this keystone habit for me because it's uncomplicated, it's quick, and provides pretty predictable results. I personally believe that confidence is often dependent on our ability to recognize self-destructive behavior and make changes whenever we see our shortcomings. And by making progress towards being genuinely content with who we are, it can benefit us massively in every area of our lives. And personally, like many others, this habit of exercise is more than just about becoming healthier, looking better, or getting stronger or increasing endurance. Interestingly, developing this one keystone habit of exercise caused me to do something else, which was wake up early, as this was the only time that my gym was quiet enough to get a decent workout in. But in doing this, it also made me realize how much of an impact a good start had on my confidence levels throughout the day. The reason morning routines are great is because you can work on yourself before the day gets started, where things like work start to get in the way. And this is especially important if you want to become confident and happy with who you are. Unfortunately, the romanticized morning routines that you often see here on YouTube analyze CEOs, billionaires, and movie stars who probably have needs completely different from your own. And often what is underemphasized is arguably the most important thing in making a morning routine stick, which is the habit of going to bed early, which is both incredibly uninspiring but also much easier said than done. With the exception of a few lucky weirdos, most adults need 8 hours of sleep each night, and I am definitely one of them. So if your goal is to wake up at 4 AM consistently, it probably ain't happening unless you're getting to bed at 8 PM. And considering that we all have completely different circadian rhythms and sleep requirements, this may not work for you anyway, so you're going to have to figure out your optimal schedule by yourself. The real struggle though is getting our brains to switch off at the end of the day, and I find that this is now harder than ever because of our dopamine fueled devices. Even though you now may be in your late 20s, if you want to become a person who's truly happy with who you are, it's likely that you still need a bedtime alarm, just like your mummy said. So seeing as most of us no longer have our mums to nag at us, setting a bedtime alarm is probably a good idea. But unfortunately, they're never quite as effective as we can just mute them and forget about them instead, where we can easily find ourselves going on social media and YouTube binges late into the evening. One thing that I found to be incredibly helpful to fix this problem is setting up screen time restrictions on my iPhone. I'm quite sure most Android devices have a way of doing this too, but you can set up what Apple calls downtime, which allows you to essentially turn your smartphone into a dumb phone by blacklisting every app that's non-essential between the times that you allocate, which adds a really nice layer of friction to curb your dopamine addiction. To be fair, this would probably be beneficial for me to leave on all the time, but for the most part it serves as a great reminder for my mornings and my evenings, as it's incredibly annoying to go through the process of trying to turn off these restrictions every time that I try to use a blacklisted app. So it serves me the necessary friction that I need to get me to start winding down. This has proven to be the most powerful strategy to get me to sleep earlier, as I know that my smarter past self consciously sets this so that my usually stupid future self is forced to go through the trouble of de-restricting it, which usually delivers just the right amount of guilt in order for me to change my mind. I choose to set mine between the hours of 9 PM and 9 AM, and choose to leave my phone charging away from my bed, which ensures that I get an hour or two to wind down without a screen before bed, and because the timer doesn't run out until 9 AM, it ensures that I can carry out my morning routine without distraction, as I only allow whitelisted productivity apps that I need, like those for reading or listening to books. Speaking of which, the biggest habit that I regret not starting sooner is reading. This is stupidly simple, but for some reason it is so hard to do, and there's definitely a reason that the most successful people in the world read more books. When I was in my last full-time job, it quickly dawned on me that I was in an incredibly insular and old-fashioned environment, which didn't really encourage me to challenge the status quo or explore different ways of doing things, which is interesting because this happens to be great for our self-development and confidence. We likely end up conforming to what society expects of us because in school our entire education is structured around this idea of being able to follow orders and not our curiosity. We're educated just enough to believe what we've been taught, but not educated enough to question what it is that we've been taught. And I found that reading whatever sparks your curiosity fills the gap that education so often misses out. It's no coincidence that the Nazis, communist regimes, and religious groups throughout history did their best to control people through the restriction of books, as within them are often the ideas that inspire change. And as cheesy as the saying goes, knowledge is power, as it's those with knowledge who usually wind up with all of the control. And so it's probably understandable why our education can have massive implications on our confidence. The more you understand yourself or a certain topic, the more likely you are to be confident about your position on it, which is why it is so important to follow your curiosity and read. Because this seems like such a struggle for pretty much all of us, my first tip to start reading more is to just find stuff that you're curious about. So only pick up books that genuinely interest you, even if they're just fiction, in order to build this habit. And then don't feel obliged to finish them if they begin to bore you, as there's no reason to not put them down and just start another one. Although physical books are great for this, they do have the physical limitations of taking up space and being annoying to carry around or move, which is especially true if you're constantly switching up what you're reading all of the time. So I personally prefer ebooks as a more minimal alternative, which let you hop from book to book and have a copy which magically synchronizes the current page number across all of your devices. One thing that has also blown my mind is that Kindle books now also pair with Audible through the companions function. So not only can you have your page number synced across all of your devices for both audio and ebook, you can have your device read it to you whilst it shows you your place on the page, which is really helpful if you're listening to an audiobook but also want to stop and highlight it. It's crazy to even say this as I've been such a long-term fan and paying subscriber to this service, but Audible are actually sponsoring this video, and I have to say that even though I'm infamously frugal and minimalist about most things, reading is the one place where I spare zero expense, as I truly believe that there's no better investment than investing in yourself. I'm a fan of a lot of learning platforms, but Audible is the one that quite literally changed my life, as listening when compared to reading is almost effortless, and when it dawned on me that I could listen to audiobooks at 2 times speed whilst working out, it blew my mind and became the basis of my morning routine every single day. Using Audible also means that I'm much more content doing things like commuting or cleaning, as I can always have the option to stick on an audiobook and turn it into a more productive use of my time. And of course, they have quite literally thousands of titles to choose from, both fiction and non-fiction, and because they have a rating and review section too, it's really easy to discover new life-changing listens, which I find really helpful. I personally recommend Audible to all of my family and friends, and I think that a subscription could be the best gift that you give yourself during the holiday season. And I personally pay full price for this service to this day, but you can now snag 60% off for the first 3 months at just $5.95 a month. And if you're still on the fence, new members get the first 30 days for free anyway, so you really have nothing to lose in just trying it out. You can learn more about this at audible.com/Daniel Titchener, which I've linked down in the description below. Or you can just text Daniel Titchener to 500 500, and if you give it a go, you may find that the habit of listening to audiobooks is as valuable as I've found it for learning and building confidence. Reading more really changed my perspective on life, from things like cryptocurrency to caffeine, and as I continued to read, it became increasingly clear that there was this pattern developing between confidence, happiness, and gratitude. The philosopher Socrates once said that the secret of happiness is not found in seeking more, but in developing the capacity to enjoy less. And what he's saying here is that this essentially boils down to gratitude, which is learning to be grateful for what it is that we currently have. And despite what society tells us, you don't need fame or fortune to get this, as the key to a happier life is actually available to anyone. It just requires a change in our mindset. And this is something that can be developed through habit. In a 2015 study, researchers found that keeping a gratitude journal produced a sustained reduction in perceived stress by 28% and even reduced the risk of depression and improved participants' sleep quality. The more you read, this idea of gratitude is repeated again and again, but somehow consumerism still gets the better of us through the temporary highs that it gives. I think the reason a lot of people fail at developing this gratitude mindset is because we think, oh, okay, I'll just be more grateful from now on and everything will be okay. But really, this never really works out because we so easily forget this. So I knew that if I was going to figure this out, I had to turn it into a habit through journaling. In the past, I've never been interested in the mindfulness side of journaling, as productivity was always the priority. But this changed as soon as I began to realize that mindfulness actually increases our productivity and endurance. So in order to stay consistent, I had to make this kind of journaling as easy as possible because it's not something that I particularly like to do. So now I only implement 2 super quick journaling techniques that I can get done in less than 5 minutes. The main technique, which I think is really powerful, is called homework for life, which is something that's covered in Matthew Dick's book Storyworthy. And all it is basically a micro diary, as what you do is write down in only 1 or 2 sentences the most story-worthy moment of each day, and you get this incredible log of everything significant that happens each day. And what's great is that the shorter it is, the better it is. In doing this, I've been building this habit of learning to search for what's actually interesting in life, and eventually I've began to realize that what I once thought was a boring life isn't actually so boring after all, which I found to be great for my self-acceptance and confidence. I started taking my journaling game up a notch by keeping track of my days like this using Notion, as it makes the entire thing searchable, but really you could do this however you like. I found that not only does this help you feel a lot better about who it is that you are, it actually makes you feel like a more interesting person too, as you have more to talk about other than the weather. And it's also made me a lot more grateful and happy for my existence, as I typically find that there's a valuable lesson to be learnt from each and every day. All I do in addition to this is just add 3 to 5 things that I'm truly grateful for at the end of each day, like family, coffee, or yum yum chicken, which is absolutely incredible by the way, in case you haven't tried it. But what I've been finding is that searching for the small things in life helps me remember that actually in Western society we really have it so good, which really makes me feel better about what it is that I have and who it is that I am. I can't really guarantee that doing these things is going to skyrocket your confidence to stand-up comedian level, but I do think that they have significantly helped me in becoming more confident of my own abilities. And seeing as confidence is mainly about being comfortable with who it is that you are, these habits have really helped me at least reduce the amount of times that I turn bright red, as I flush incredibly easy, so this used to be quite a common occurrence. I can't say that I've fully arrived, as I still get nervous at times, like most people, but I do believe that true confidence is about learning who it is that you are and striving to become the best version of yourself through integrity, courage, and service, and realizing that it's actually okay not being the absolute best at everything, and that it's okay if you fail at times. And I think that these 4 habits of regular exercise, early mornings, reading, and journaling played a huge role in developing that self-respect and self-awareness that I didn't really have before. Hopefully you guys found this video helpful, coming from someone who's naturally quite self-conscious and shy, and if you did, it would mean a lot if you drop a like and let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, as this really does help to put this video in front of other people who might enjoy this too. And one last thing, I know that the past couple of videos have been a little bit longer and less b-roll heavy, so let me know if you enjoy this format, as it actually means that I can put out content a little more quickly, which is something that I probably need to work on. And finally, I just want to say that all of the support that you guys show doesn't go unnoticed, and I'm truly grateful for all of you guys watching these videos, especially those of you who make it all the way to the end. So thanks so much for watching and sticking around, and I will see you in the next one very soon.